Peace and blessings. This is Brother Mike X. Welcome to another clip from my YouTube channel, Brother Mike X Speaks. Before I begin, I really wanted to, send a shout out to the various members of, the Black/African family who have sought to share, from their life, from their experiences, from their studies, to strive to shine light on, where we're at and what we need to be able to do for ourselves in order to ensure that we have an opportunity to move into the future, and provide, ourselves, particularly our babies, with what they need to be able to, protect themselves and to be able to grow and to be able to, be on point, and add on to the rich culture and heritage, that we have as a people. And I know that we all don't agree, on everything. I know that, there has been such tampering, across the ages, to keep us from being able to come together in a cohesive way. You know what I mean? That a lot of us, we don't particularly agree on the methods that we need to be able to use in order to ensure our survival. There are some who focus more on, politics. There's some who focus more on, culture. You know what I mean? There's some who focus more on, and when I say culture, I'm talking about, a particular color scheme or a particular ritual or a particular, way of speaking, you know what I mean? And a lot of times we feel that that's what's needed. There are some who focus or want to focus on, the need for us to reintroduce spirituality, into our movement, and when I say spirituality, I'm not talking about religion. You know what I mean? Religion a lot of times is based upon a particular, rituals and symbolism. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about spirituality in the sense of, us learning to let go of bowing down to worldly conditions and worldly customs, so that we can begin to rise above these things as individuals and as a collective, believing that there is a divine order, to this world and to this universe. And and some of us believe that what has definitely happened with us is that we've become disconnected to that divine order and fallen into worldly practices and pursuits, and that is a big part, if not the biggest part, of why we find ourselves in the condition that we find ourselves in. So when it comes to the black movement, or lack thereof, what I've found as someone who's been striving to be on his job as a black man in this society, coming up out of the projects, and wanting to see a healing, a regeneration, a resurrection, of our people, and, coming from that project, ghetto level. What I found a lot of times is the problem with the black movement is that it depends upon significant numbers of people coming to an agreement on what the best course of action is, to move forward, and submitting their individual egos to that common cause, so that we can be stronger together than what we are as individuals. And we've been hard pressed to bring that type of unity together, It's like we've been knocked down and held down and destroyed so long that, you know, it's hard for us, you know, a lot of us to participate in taking back those old customs, you know, doing the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding so that we can begin to reconnect ourselves with, you know, a stronger way of being able to live as an individual, you know, so that we can be free of, you know, the ignorance that this society cultivates in us. You know, a lot of us have become slaves to our senses, you know, to our sight, to our hearing, to our feeling, you know, the feelings, you know, and also the feelings, you know, the emotional state of being. A lot of us have become slaves to gratifying our senses, you know, and because we've become slaves to gratifying our senses, a lot of us, you know, live our lives based upon what we have on, you know, what we're wearing, you know, who we're connected with, you know, who we can portray ourselves as dominant to. You know what I mean? And over and above of, you know, and a lot of us do not run our own lives. Our lives are shaped and molded and run by the perceptions that have been created outside of us. And so we're not free, a lot of us. A lot of us don't have personal freedom, you know, to be who we feel we need to be as individuals based upon our pursuit of higher knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So a lot of us want to fit into a particular group, a particular club, you know, or a particular relationship with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you know, or a particular group, you know, based upon, well, what we're wearing on our feet, you know, the Jordans, you know, the high price sneakers or a particular style of clothing. And the people who have manufactured and helped to divorce us or disconnect us from living our lives, you know, based upon the higher thoughts, you know, and spirit of, you know, of being able to pursue being in the world but not of the world, they control us. They got us going and coming. I'm sitting outside of Barnes and Nobles. This is one of my favorite, you know, they call it my second home up here in the Bronx. But I'm sitting like in a mall. And most of the people who's coming into this mall area, they not going in there to get no knowledge. They going over to the mall, man, to spend some money. Pursuing, you know, facades, pursuing veneers of, you know, yeah, the world is crumbling around us. Yeah, it's looking like these are the last days prophesied in scripture. Yeah, our people are being shot down in the streets, you know, and in the churches. But yo, yeah, all of that's happening, man. But look at what I got on. You know, look at what I'm wearing. You know, I don't want to come off as crass. You know, I don't want to come off as abusive. Because, yo, believe me, family, I came up in this mix myself. You know, like Minister Farrakhan said, you know, I was born in America. You know what I mean? Sin and shaped in iniquity, white supremacy, just like most of us. You know? So I was born, you know, and taught self-hatred as a black man. I was born and shaped in the mainstream public schools and in the media and believed at one point in time that to be black, you are inferior and are a slave. You know, so I'm not trying to rag on our brothers and sisters, but yo, what I am saying is we don't have too much more time to get it together, man. You know, we don't have too much more time. I believe these are the last days prophesied in scripture. I believe these are the days, man, where, you know, you're going to have to choose a side. You know, you're going to have to choose a side and you're going to have to figure out how to get down with righteousness and justice, you know, we're all going to have to figure out how to wean ourselves off of being slaves to our senses, you know, being slaves to being able to consume, you know, somebody else's products, you know, and living our lives in a way where we're allowing other people to decide for us what our priorities are, you know, and who we're going to align ourselves with. You know, we're coming to a day, man, where it's going to be just, ignorance, it might be bliss, but ignorance is a recipe for catastrophe. You know, if you continue to walk around in this world where the hatred for our people, particularly our men, is being just, shown and proved that, like, they're not playing. If you continue to walk around in a world where, a lot of times you participate through your ignorance in your own self-defeat, I don't even know, man. But it ain't gonna be good, In lieu of, this white dude going into this black church and shooting up 9 members, of the family, a lot of people they got different reactions. Some are like, we need to start arming ourselves. And family, we already armed, Joe. What do you mean we got to start arming ourselves? In some of these places where we're living at, we're killing each other every day. We got guns. You know what I mean? Black people got guns. They got arms. You know what I mean? And they're using them, not to defend themselves, but to destroy themselves. And this goes back to that mindset of self-hatred, of ignorance, man, that has been fostered in us, So I'm just saying, like, we're going to have to wean ourselves off of being slaves to the flesh, being slaves to, the tastes, being slaves to the sights, being slaves to what we hear, gossip and slander and ratchetness, you know what I mean, coming through the television and the movies and all of that. And we're going to have to learn how to return to the voice of the Creator, And I'm not one of them types of people, like, and I'm not talking about the church, man. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about the mosque per se, I'm not talking about the temple, but I am talking about knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, man. Truth. We got to start. There is a proper way to be able to live your life. You are supposed to be able to pursue the truth of what it is to maintain this physical form. What kind of foods to eat, what kind of exercise, to be able to put your body through so that you can maintain health, wellness, and vibrancy. There is a particular way to minister to your mind and minister to the stability of your emotions, so that you don't walk around, angry and wrathful, and hating the world, man, so that you can't build any meaningful relationships amongst your family, amongst your friends and neighbors. There is a way for you to conduct yourself in a righteous way, man, so that you can, form friendships and positive relationships with, first and foremost, your kind, your people. And then, you could also form relationships based upon truth and justice with other groups of people beyond race and ethnicity who are also interested in practicing truth with you and justice with you. So, family, I want you, tell me what you think and open your mind to what I'm saying. And it's not about me. I can't save you. I can only save me. And I've been in the practice of seeking knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And what my consciousness has brought me to now, I realize that the next stage for me to be able to continue to grow and have anything relevant to offer to the family is I have to destroy the core of the lower senses of the flesh that I've been talking about. And I have to totally give myself over to the spirit, towards spirituality, so that I can grow above the bonds, that hold a lot of us in check. So stick with me, family. I'm running out of time, and I'll talk to you soon, man.